Welcome back to Step Parenting Network. My name is Lena Shine, and on today's episode, I have here with me Bridget Bennett.
Bridget is a devoted mother of four, a professional paralegal with 21 years of experience, and a high conflict custody battle survivor. She's the founder of Breaking Badass Coaching, a coaching practice built for parents navigating high conflict custody battles, narcissistic exes, and court systems that too often fail protective parents. Certified in high conflict personalities through divorce through the High Conflict Institute, Bridget helps clients build strategy, document effectively for family court, and communicate in ways that protect them both legally and emotionally, all without the lawyer price tag. Her work is rooted in lived experience and a fierce belief that no parent should have to fight these battles alone.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi,
Thank you
Lena.
so much for joining me on this episode.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, you survived your own high conflict custody battle, won sole custody, and got domestic violence protection order, and then turned that experience into a coaching practice. What did the
Yeah.
courts get wrong before they got right? And what did you have to learn to make this work for you?
Oh, goodness. The court got a lot of things wrong. I was in the court system for many years, and the judge initially in my case thought that I was part of the problem, that I was too high conflict, that I was labeled as the bitter ex-wife that was still in love with her ex-husband.
Oh boy.
And I was just trying to get revenge on my ex husband and his, at the time, second wife. And that, as a result, that ended up with, one point or another, there was a mutual retaliatory restraining order that my ex husband filed against me when mine was served on him, and it was granted. And then both of our restraining orders were in place for about a year. He never renewed his, and mine has been in place for, gosh, over 6 years now. So there's that was wrong initially. And I think it's something that most of my audience, as well, I'm sure many of people that are listening to this can relate to and be like, as soon as I did something, they retaliated. And it's very, very common. There's a huge study that's been done on it. And it's well known as DARVA, which is Deny Attack Reverse Victim Offender. And that's something that's implemented by abusers all over.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could tell you I was arrested at one point. I was put in jail, having a panic attack in jail, on the concrete floor because my ex-husband was also arrested. And he made up some bogus allegations that I had violated this protective order. None of it was true. And, I think at that moment, I recognized like I was probably towards my rock bottom. He had taken my kids from me with this bogus restraining order with all these allegations. And I got my kids back after 3 weeks or so. But it was probably the most challenging year of my life that year, fighting through that restraining order, fighting through the noise, and wanting, uh, ultimately, I wanted like this day of justice in family court. And I wanted the judge to understand what was happening. I wanted to be believed. And so I had an overwhelming amount of evidence and I presented it to, the judge. And a lot of it was overlooked or it was spun by my ex's attorney, to paint this like really terrible image of me. I made it through all of that. And years down the road, I want to say about maybe a year to 2 years after that restraining order was put in place, I ended up filing for emergency custody of my children. And that was granted to me after a few months. And then I got sole legal and physical custody of my boys. It was a long battle in family court.
And the kids got to see every bit of it, didn't they?
They did. They did. And, I've been married to two different individuals and I have 4 kids total. So all of my kids are the product of, divorce, and they've been exposed, unfortunately, to a lot of abuse and trauma. Um, and I think it's really difficult to protect children from everything that's happening between divorcing parties or separated parents. As much as we try to keep the children out of the middle and out of adult conflict, they get a sense of what's going on and they can feel the tension, I think, between parents. And there's nothing more that I would have wanted than for my children to be sheltered from all of that. As I'm also a product of divorce parents. And so, I experienced a lot of that from my own childhood. Yeah.
Is there anything that you did differently to kind of not shelter their experience, but to help cushion them from their experience? For any mom who is going through a similar situation and doesn't know what to do and how to protect the kids the best way they can without necessarily being able to protect them fully from the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, most kids come to us and they're asking really difficult questions, right? Complicated questions that have complex answers. And they're not really age appropriate for children, developmentally appropriate. And so when those questions would come my way from my kids of like, why is daddy doing this? Or why doesn't he want to be nice to you? Or why is this happening? Right. And I reassured my children the best way that I could at the time.
Mhm.
And I reminded them of like, these are adult problems. Let the adults handle the adult things. Your only job is to be a kiddo and to have fun and to play and tell mommy all about your things and to talk to daddy, right? And tell daddy how much fun you're having. So, even in the worst of my circumstances, because my children were exposed to a lot of abuse and they were being abused by their other parent, I did the best that I could to encourage and support them so that they could feel free to have the relationship that they chose with both myself and their father.
So you're not a lawyer, you're a paralegal and a survivor. Does
That's
that
right.
does that distinction make you more effective for the parents that you serve rather than perhaps a traditional attorney would be?
I think so. For me, I have hundreds and hundreds of clients that come to me on a regular basis. And, the biggest complaint that I hear is I've spent thousands of dollars on this attorney. They didn't understand. They don't understand what to do with this evidence. They don't understand what to do with my documentation. How can I get the judge to see? And I have lived through it. I've literally pulled myself out of the trenches of my own life and my case. And I was able to get the judge to see the full story. It took me a lot of time. And so the lessons that I learned along the way is what I implement in my coaching practice. It is what I encourage other parents to do. There's certain buzzwords that we want to avoid in family court. I teach them those. There's certain things that, as much as we want the judge and everyone in that courtroom to understand us and to believe us, sometimes that always doesn't happen, right? The best way to build credibility in a courtroom is by being the one that is most organized and cool, calm, and collected, speaking in a very neutral, calm way, much like how I'm speaking now. That gets you a lot further in family court versus dumping all of this emotion, talking about how unfair things are, using words such as abuse. I'm not saying never talk about it, but it actually can put kind of more of a target on your back in the family court system.
Wow. I would have thought it would be the opposite.
You'd think, but there's a lot of deep rooted corruption in family court, and Darvo is implemented, right? And so we see the minute we say abuse, the opposing attorneys will say, oh, well, he or she is alienating the child from the parent. And they'll get into this term of parental alienation, which I hate. It's a term that is used in family court, but it's pseudoscience, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
actually exist. And it doesn't exist in the DSM-5. And so they're saying that there's no possible way that a child could, on their own organically, reject one of the parents. right? They must be coached. There must be, therefore, something that is going on, and the protective, healthy parent is pushing that, or they're emotionally abusive, right? So there's a lot of things that are ineffective when it comes to family court. CPS involvement is also completely ineffective. CPS does not do the job that people think that they would. Of my kids are coming home, they're telling me that they don't have food, they're being hit, they're coming home with bruises on their body, and CPS oftentimes will come back with results of unsubstantiated reports, unfounded allegations of abuse. And so it's not the actual tool that many think will have the needle moving in family court. It doesn't work that way.
Hmm. So part of high conflict relationships have step parents present in all of the mix,
Mm-hmm.
because step parents are at the intersection of a loss. Blended families are at the intersection of a loss. The main reason why a blended family exists in the first place is because someone divorced someone else. And then you blend together. So step parents happen to find themselves in the mix of all of this. Um, a step parent has no legal backing or standing in family court, right?
That is
But
correct.
they're living inside the conflict every single day. What is that one thing a step parent can do right now that actually moves the needle without having the legal standing?
Be supportive of your partner. Be supportive of your partner. Provide them some insight, some guidance. Listen to your partner. Do some research on your own to understand high conflict dynamics. I use that term because I'm not here to diagnose anyone with narcissism or sociopathy, right? But rather focusing on the behavior of an individual and how that behavior makes us feel. Trying to not directly engage with the high conflict person. Rather, you can be a support person for your spouse, for them to be doing this, helping them, maybe helping with documenting how to improve their communication, right? To help over time potentially de escalate the conflict. And it's really, really hard. It's learning how to take not only a step parent, but also, the co-parent out of this situation where we feel emotionally reactive constantly, and getting to a place of indifference, recognizing that there is nothing that we can do that can control another person. We are only responsible for our own reactions, responses, and controlling how we engage with others, right? So there's no sense in sending long paragraphs to a high conflict person. For as much as we want to, put it on the record, it's actually ineffective. So if we can keep it brief, if we can keep it to a few sentences, not reacting emotionally, not giving them instant access to us. And as a step parent, you reminding your partner of that, of, hey, sweetheart, you know what? I know that right now you're probably triggered from that message. We're going to put the phone down. Let's come back to it later. It's not life or death right now. We're going to come back to it later, because a high conflict person tries to continue to maintain control through someone's time when the relationship is over. So it's a control mechanism. And I think as a good partner, that would be a helpful tool.
I totally agree. I love that perspective. Getting to that place of indifference it takes some step parents some time to get there, because in the beginning they feel so worked up, wanting to help to solve the issue, wanting to minimize it, wanting their home to remain safe because they feel the threat coming in from an outsider. And I think a lot of step parents over time learn the skill of being indifferent, but it takes some time for them to get there.
It does. It does. And it's not easy, right? It's easier for people like myself, right? I'm a coach. I'm on the outside. I don't have any emotional connection to the situation, but getting into a good practice, whether it's meditation, journaling, going outside, breathing techniques, things like this, and recognizing there's nothing that I'm doing wrong. I am wonderful as I am. What can I do to maybe improve my emotional reactivity? Right.
Mhm.
And knowing that your house is your home, your rules, what happens in your home between you and your partner and your children, that is strictly on your time. And Even though we're co parenting with a high conflict person, in actuality, we're parallel parenting. So we can't expect the other parent to be following the same bedtime routine that we have in our home with our children or, homework routine because they're not. And so there's no points in us telling them what to do.
Let's talk a little bit about co-parenting.
Okay.
What's the difference between parallel parenting and
Mhm.
co-parenting?
It's pretty easy. So, parallel parenting is their house, their rules, none of your business. Your house, your rules, none of their business. And they're going to try to make it their business often. And we can get ourselves stuck in this toxic cycle. It's just kind of the nature of being around someone that's high conflict. We'll get into like this back and forth, this tit for tat. Oh, well, he said this to me and he's trying to dictate to me when I, give the kids a bath and when we do bedtime and how many stories I read at night. Okay. Just because he's doing that doesn't mean that you therefore have to do the same, right? So it's learning to recognize that immediately in yourself so that you don't get sucked in to this toxic cycle because it's really hard to get out of when you're stuck in it.
Now, it's easy to differentiate the two between the adults, but how do you explain this to the child to let the child know mom's house, her rules, and my house, my rules?
Great question. I think explaining it to the children, right? First and foremost, our job is to be truth tellers and to always communicate with our children in a way that is developmentally appropriate. I learned this long ago from my son's therapist. But to tell children of, I appreciate, thank you for sharing what daddy does at daddy's house, or thank you for sharing what mommy does at mommy's house. At our house, we do things this way and we do things a little different, and that's okay. Right? It's okay if dad does things different. It's okay if mom does things different. But this is what we're going to follow here. And recognizing, right? And telling the child it's okay. It's not about one parent being right and the other parent being wrong. It's not about right and wrongness. It's just simply recognizing the difference, identifying it for the child, and they can make their own decision as to what feels best for them. That provides them the space of autonomy.
I love that.
Thank you.
Do you recommend that all children who have experienced divorce should be enrolled in therapy?
Absolutely. 1000%. Yes. Yes. It's really hard for kids, right? They feel like these loyalty binds are created, whether we want them to or not. And especially with a high conflict parent, they feel like they have to be ultra loyal to that parent and they're in survival mode, right? They're in this trauma response of fight or flight often when they're at their home and they want to do all they can to survive, to stay off of their radar, to stay out of trouble, right? To be the good kid. And then they come back home to a healthy protective parent and they don't have to act the same. So there's a lot of emotional dysregulation. Giving them a space, a safe space where they can go and speak to a therapist, learn strategies and tools to help them regulate their emotions and identify the emotions, understanding that multiple things can coexist. We can be angry and sad and happy all at the same time, and that's okay. But allowing them the opportunity to learn that on their own.
I agree. If a high conflict bio parent is weaponizing the children against the step parent, and specifically the step parent, not the spouse, what does that situation look like? And why do you think this happens?
It's so hard because it almost always happens, right? From a high conflict person looking at their mo and how they're thinking, they view a new partner as a threat. So they view the step parent as a threat and they're very territorial, right? And so they feel like their children for them are like property. They belong to them. No one else should be in this space. And so it's important for a step parent to not overstep, but to rather support the co-parent that is having to deal with this high conflict person, supporting the partner so that they're doing the majority of the parenting, right? And adopting more of a role of like a friendship, not saying that you can't parent this child, but understanding that your role is a little different. You're not the disciplinarian, you're not the person that is going to be doing the majority of the parenting. You're supporting your partner who is doing it. right? And not engaging as the step parent, do not engage with the high conflict person when they come at you with attacks or whatever it may be, or, they're trying to create and drive a wedge between you and your partner. Right. And they're miserable. They're miserable people on the inside. They have really low self esteem. And so they want other people to be miserable with them. If they can drive a wedge and create a problem and a conflict between you and your partner, they're succeeding. Right. They're creating conflict and chaos. And it's the same equivalent as giving them an oxygen mask and the airplane is going down and you guys are reacting to this stuff. You guys have now put the oxygen mask on the high conflict parent before putting it on yourselves. So we've got to recognize that and be like, nope, no, no, pause, pause, pause. I see what's happening here. We're not going to do this. Just because they're saying something doesn't mean that it's actually true. Let's
Mhm.
have this conversation in our relationship.
Yes. I think I will forever preach this that as a step parent, you don't have to even have communication with a high conflict co parent at all.
Correct, correct. If you can avoid it, it is better. It is better for you. It is better for the family system. It is better for your partner, even.
Yes. And sometimes it's better for the child too, because they are not torn and having the loyalty
Mhm.
binds. I like my stepmom and I love mom, but I don't want mom to know I like my stepmom because mom will be
Mhm.
upset about it. So I have to pretend every time I see my stepmom and mom is around that I don't like my stepmom. And that's a
Yes,
lot
it is.
internally to battle with.
It is. It really is. And, and if that comes up for children, I was a stepchild at one point and I didn't have the greatest childhood because my stepmother was not very kind to me, nor was my father at times. But, I remember there being moments in time where I really enjoyed spending time with my stepmother. Right. And I did share that with my mom at times. And I wasn't ridiculed by my mom for feeling that way. But I also wasn't like given that acceptance or that appreciation, right? Because there was a lot of traumatic things that had occurred in that relationship. But my children, my oldest one of my oldest daughters, she's 19 now, and her father and the stepmother have since divorced, is my understanding. And she has a relationship that she has worked through with her stepmother, um, and talks to her stepmom. She has other siblings that she wants to maintain that relationship. And for me, as the protective mom, right, knowing what I've been through with that relationship and what the parent had done to my child, I pulled myself out of the equation completely. And I recognized, you know what? My daughter and any of my children are capable of making their own decisions and deciding how they feel, think, and having the relationships in their lives that they want. And so I've pulled myself out of it. And it's not easy because there's moments that come up and you're like, God, I've like busted my butt. I've done everything for this child. Why? Why? Right? But it's not about that, right? The child is navigating their own emotions and the relationship that they want to have, or maybe something that they feel that they need. So it's
Mm.
permitting that to happen.
Walk us through what court ready documentation actually looks like, especially in a high conflict situation. What are parents getting wrong when they're trying to document on their own?
So, the problem that just about everyone has, I would say 90% of individuals, is they're documenting everything, which is great. And then they're turning over all this documentation to their attorney and they're like, here's my case, take it, like figure it out, right? Your attorney is not going to do that. Attorneys are notoriously lazy, and people are like, I've spent thousands of dollars on this retainer. They're supposed to be building my case for me. They're not going to. So, what we do is we take this raw data, right? The raw documentation. And we then convert it into evidence that can be used in court. Instead of maybe giving hundreds of messages to a judge or screenshots to see, we're going to narrow down to a few really good ones that show what we're trying to, provide an example of. The parent was late consistently over the past 6 months to the exchange. They were more than 15 minutes late. Here's messages that represent that, right? I'm sitting at the exchange location, I've communicated, and then I've left after 15 minutes, right? So, learning how to identify 3 to 5 main themes that you see are an ongoing problem and looking at this between 6 to 12 months so that we can really consider this pattern of behavior that is ongoing, right? Instead of turning everything over. So, learning how to simplify things. And it can be hard as one in it because you're emotionally attached and you feel that everything is so important. Sit down with a friend, find a coach. There's so many people like me, right? But find someone that can sit down with you and give you an outsider's perspective as to what is really important and what is just a lot of noise and keeping your case in the weeds, right? So we can tell a clear story. That's the whole point of the documentation, is to convert it to evidence.
That's a good one.
It's, I think for my legal brain, right? I'm like, I'm able to visualize it. Maybe not everybody can, right? So instead of presenting thousands of documents, because a judge is never going to see it, right? They have a lot of cases. You're allotted a certain amount of time in a courtroom to have your case presented. And at hearings, sometimes you'll have 30 minutes, right? That'll be 15 minutes for each side. What are the key points that you want to drive versus everything? What are the key issues? And can I pull some examples? Do I have physical documentation that supports it? The child needs therapy. The other parent is not permitting that to happen. Well, I have a referral here from the pediatrician that says that the child would benefit from therapy. That is a third party neutral professional who is indicating a need, right? Has provided a recommendation. Well, that medical record or that letter with the recommendation can later be used as evidence in a case. And that is really what helps to bring attention to certain things in family court.
Conversations like this are so necessary, and our society needs this more and more. I created the Step Parenting Network from a very, very intimate space, knowing that step parents need to be heard, seen, appreciated, and loved. If you're a step parent or someone in a blended family, I hope that you go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button. I'd love to have you as part of our community. It helps the algorithm as well to be able to share this with people, especially people who need this the most. So hit the like button, subscribe, make a comment, and share this with any stepmom or stepdad that you might think of, because they might need this more than you know. Now back to the video. Let's talk a little bit about targeting, because in most high conflict co-parenting with a high conflict co-parent, there's all often targeting, especially when there's a step parent involved, the new person. And so if the step parent is being used as, let's say, an ammunition in court, for example, the new partner is the problem, what can the family do to kind of build a counter narrative without necessarily removing the step parent from the picture?
So, when the high conflict parent identifies the new partner as the problem, it's the job of the healthy parent, that partner, to really work on their communication with the other. And they can say things, and even the children, right? But let's talk about the partner aspect first. They could send a message in writing, I can't believe that she's doing this, and she's yelling at the kids, and she's not making their lunches, whatever the allegation may be, right? Your partner can then respond, thank you for your message. Just because you say something doesn't make it true. I will continue to provide lunches for the children every single day that they're in school. Thank you. Right. And without engaging emotionally, that is the key, is to learning how to turn it off. We don't have to justify, argue, defend, or explain ourselves, right? We implement Jade. We don't do that with a high conflict person because it continues to bring conflict and it feels like you're in a soap opera, right? It feels very dramatic. We want to get out of that. And so this is why we implement this method. Now, for the children, if they come home and they say, my mommy said that you're mean. My mommy said that you're this. My mommy said that, she doesn't like the soap that you use to wash our clothes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. How did that make you feel? What are your thoughts about it? Do you like the soap that I'm using here to wash your clothes? Or, okay, you didn't like that. Did you like that in your lunch that I packed for you? Right? What would you prefer? Right? So providing this is an opportunity that is gifted to you as the step parent to have communication with this child and to ask them questions that make them curious, that have this constructive thinking that we're building. And that is really solid strategy and a tool that you can gift a child is to become a critical thinker when they have to share time with a high conflict parent, because that high conflict person doesn't want them to think on their own. They don't want them to have their own thoughts or feelings if it's not in unison with the high conflict parent. So you now have like some kryptonite because you can develop this rapport and relationship with the child by asking very simple questions.
Hmm. I think that was really good. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. It works.
it does.
Consistency. Consistency is key.
It does. Because oftentimes the children have their own experience, very different from the narrative that um, their biological parent, the high conflict parent, is feeding them. And so giving them that opportunity to kind of think about it again and realize, no, but I don't have any problem with it, gives them the tools and the skills for them to actually start to think for themselves on their own. Because high chances are they don't even have the practice of doing so before perhaps you came into the picture or before the opportunity was presented to them, because their high conflict parents never gave them the opportunity to.
Correct. Right. And then they don't often recognize their voice, right? And none of us are born with the ability to recognize our emotions, really, and to learn how to navigate or regulate our emotions, or even how to have some of these really difficult conversations. And so this is a teaching opportunity for us to provide guidance to children so that they can be successful adults with healthy relationships.
If a parent has been called too emotional, unstable, or difficult to co parent with by a high conflict ex or co parent, and those labels are starting to maybe stick in court and they're starting to believe it, how do you rebuild your credibility with a judge?
Well, first and foremost, the protective, healthy parent needs to recognize that this is 100% projection from the high conflict parent, right? They are the emotionally unstable one. They are the problem, but they are really good at playing victim. They are professional victims. So, to start changing the narrative, you have to learn how to improve your communication. Now, I coach the BIF method, which is brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And I didn't develop it. It's from Bill Eddy with the High Conflict Institute. And I've had the pleasure to be taught by him, actually, and is a wonderful man. And this method, the more that we implement it in our communication, we see over time a de escalation of the conflict. So if you can learn how to stop reacting emotionally, we're going to start responding to things, be organized, stop trying to push all of the information at once, and don't look at it as like fairness or how the child is taking out as much emotion as you can when you're presenting your case and when you're communicating. It really helps to shift, because if you'll notice in a courtroom, an abusive person, right, a coercive control or high conflict person, they are cool, calm, and collected always. Right. And they were this way when they were abusing you. And then all of a sudden, there's reactive abuse. You're reacting, and they pull out their phone and they're sitting there and they're recording you. Right. It is like clockwork. So it is your job to be cool, calm, and collected. Regulate your emotions. Make sure you're in therapy. Talk to your doctor. Are you having physical symptoms of anxiety that are coming up for you? What can you do to help manage that in the courtroom? Stay focused and really listen to questions when they're being asked to you in court. Only answer what is being asked. Don't go off on a tangent. That is something that most people end up doing if they are trauma survivors.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you said about the high conflict co parent being the one that tries to be cool, calm, and collected in court.
Uh-huh.
But on the flip side, being the instigator of the whole conflict itself. It's almost
Yes.
like playing a role just for the court to believe otherwise.
And they'll do it with every single person in your lives, right? They'll do it with the school system, with the pediatrician. And if we look back at, and if your partner were to look back and you're the step parent listening to this, and your partner's to look back at how that relationship started with this individual, I'm sure they were charismatic. They came across as this wonderful, charming person, right? And so they're able to turn that on and wear that mask and perform in all arenas that you encounter them in. But it is a facade. We're not trying to prove that they're high conflict or that they're narcissistic. We just have to simply show that we are doing our very best to co parent. We're communicating, we are child focused. And if we kind of exaggerate that a bit and we really learn how to perfect our communication and our presentation, it makes their bad behavior look worse. We don't have to call it out. We can see this contrast that happens.
Can you decide as the healthy co-parent that I'm going to parallel parent? And will the courts accept this? Or this has to be kind of like a conversation? Well, you can't really have a effective communication with a high conflict person. So what
No.
do you do when you decide
So
you want to have parallel parenting because you've tried and it's not working to co-parent?
rule number one, never say that word in family court. Never say it to a judge of, you know what, judge, we're going to parallel parent, right? Because
Okay.
they're going to look at you and be like, no, you must be co-parenting, right? And you also don't want to tell the high conflict person what you're doing either, because they're going to say, oh, they'll have these moments and they'll send a message. I really just wish that we could get along better for the sake of the kids. And I see the look, so I know you know what I'm talking about. They all do the same thing. When you experience one, you've
Oh
experienced
my
them all.
God.
It is like the narcissistic playbook. They all communicate the same way. I read hundreds of messages from high conflict parents every single week. So I know how they're communicating, right? But it is your job to act like a co parent. So in writing, right, this is the strategy that we're putting in place. We want to look like we are, obviously, we're child focused, but we want it to look like we're co parenting, right? Sharing information. Hey, John, wanted to let you know the child had their orthodontist appointment. Braces were tightened. Their next appointment is in 4 weeks. Here's the appointment date and time. Thanks, Bridget, right? We're sharing information. That message on its own is very neutral and it makes me look like a good co parent. Now, what is John going to do here? Is John going to be a good co parent? No, John's going to have those moments where he loses his shit, excuse my French, but he's going to lose his mind and spiral and send you long paragraphs, right? That's what we want them to do, right? That is the strategy. And your messages are going to be like no more than 5 sentences. We're not reacting and engaging here with what John said in his long rant because he got upset and he's suffering some kind of narcissistic injury. We're just going to stay cool, calm, and collected in the messages. And that is what helps people succeed. I often get that reaction.
Oh boy. Okay.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It really is.
It really is. So, communication with high conflict co parent, text messages or a specific platform that you would recommend, what would that look like?
I really love Talking Parents. Talking Parents, I've used it myself for years. It's a great platform. It's low cost. It has a shared calendar in it. Nothing can be deleted. Nothing can be edited from it. They can't go back in and later like delete the message where they called you really vulgar names. It's going to stay in that platform. And sometimes just by being in the platform, we're going to automatically see a de-escalation in the conflict. I don't encourage people in a high conflict co-parenting dynamic to communicate via text or email, right? Because they're still having complete access to you all the time. Now, OFW is another one that's very popular and many people use, our family wizard. I'm not really a huge fan of OFW, but I'm not really against it, right? They have a tone meter, not a fan of the tone meter. But Talking Parents is wonderful. And all of the information, you can get a certified copy of all of the communication and later have that as evidence in your case, pulling out a selected message if needed.
We use, well, I don't use, my husband uses Talking Parents,
Mm.
and initially moved from text to Talking Parents. And that really changed a lot of things in terms of the access level and even the level of stress and coercive control that was being tried to just still have on him. So I also recommend, I mean, I know it's not sponsored, but I think Talking Parents has been uh, made a difference in the co-parenting in my family too.
They really have. And, so many of us parents, we're experiencing a lot of financial abuse, right? And so having to pay a lot of money for an attorney or a guardian ad litem. And then on top of that, I've got to pay for, this expensive app. Talking Parents, I will say, is of the cheaper options. And I like it. It's kind of like an email format. You can, if you want to look up that message where they lost their mind about the dentist appointment, you just type in dentist or teeth and it pulls the messages for you. It's super fast, easy to use. Literally a kindergartner could use it. That's how easy it is.
Hmm.
For
Yeah.
those that are, they tell me, I'm not really tech savvy. That's okay. We've got you. This app, you can use it on your computer. You can use it on, your cell phone. It's great.
Okay, so loyalty binds. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Children in high conflict households are often caught in loyalty binds.
Yeah.
Both loving homes, I mean, loving both homes, but being punished for it. That's how it feels like for a child. What signs does a step parent or a bio parent looking at the child, what signs should they look for that tells them the child is being used as a messenger or a spy?
Mm, mm. So when a child comes home and starts, asking lots of questions that seem out of the ordinary, it doesn't seem like it's an appropriate question that a child would be asking, right? If you hear the child that's communicating in a way that sounds like your ex, they are being fed a lot of information, right? So it's not about, um, calling the child out for the behavior, but rather again asking them those questions of, wow, okay, that's an interesting question. Is there any particular reason why you want to know the answer, right? Or if the child comes home and says all of a sudden they hate either the parent or the step parent, right? I hate you.
Mm,
I hate you. I don't like what you're doing. I can't believe this. Um, you know what? I understand. We all have moments where we don't like other people. I get it. Um, Identifying it, trying not to emotionally react to the child because their high conflict parent does that, right? They will go off on them. If they were to say that to a high conflict parent, I mean, there would be serious consequences.
mhm.
Right. And the high conflict parent rules with intimidation, with bullying behavior, with controlling behaviors of the child. And when they come back to you, it's like this pressure cooker effect for 48 hours or so. They're trying to regulate their emotions, get back to their homeostasis and be like, "Oh, I can be myself here. It's safe for me. I can express myself freely." Right? But recognizing that in a child, is there anything we can do about the loyalty binds? No, other than reassuring the child that, you know what, they can love everyone. They can have a great relationship with anyone, and you're not going to be upset. Reminding them that no matter what, you're not going to be upset, that you still love them, and that you're always going to be there for them, and consistently continuing to show up. They will feel it. And as children grow up, they always figure out who the problem is.
Mhm. Yeah, they do.
I did. It took me over 30 years, but I figured out who the problem was. And I figured out I was unfortunately, the product of a narcissistic family system.
Hmm. Did that change your relationship with the high conflict parent?
Um, by the time I had figured it out, we were already, separated and through divorce. Did it change that? Not necessarily. I think it changed the relationship that I had with my children because I was recognizing in myself when I was maybe triggered, or working with my therapist why certain feelings were coming up for me, and why at moments I was maybe I felt like an overprotective parent with, like, my kids. Hey, can I go do this with my friend? Or hey, can I go do the other? Right. And it was because as a child, I lacked protection. I wasn't protected. And so understanding why that comes in and how that comes into place. But it's definitely helped me show up as a better parent for my children. um, I've apologized for things that I didn't know better at the time, right? For maybe not being the best parent at the time, for any time that I had physically punished my children. If I had ever spanked my children when they were quite younger, right? And I was very young, I didn't know any better until I knew better, until I recognized this is not okay. This is not how we need to parent children at all. And then I started adopting more of like a gentle parenting, conscientious parenting. That's how I try to parent my children now.
Hmm. I think that's really good, learning from the past mistakes and then rectifying it. And there's also such power. And I don't know if many parents recognize this, but there is power in apologizing to a child. They
Yes.
learn something shifts in their brain when they realize, oh my gosh, adults can make mistakes too. And then they have to own up to it and
Yeah.
recognize that they made the mistake. It changes a lot for them and how to even go about challenges in your lives, because they realize, one, I can make a mistake, but two, there is a sense of accountability that I have to make sure that I have, because I have to apologize. And then there's a morality aspect to it too, because if I wrong someone, I have to apologize for it. And I don't think a lot of parents apologize enough for the things that they did in the past. It heals wounds. It really
It does.
does.
It does. It does. And my oldest, I have a 22-year-old daughter, and she's lived through two divorces with me, and I had her when I was quite young. There was a lot of mistakes that I made as a parent, and as a young parent, I became a parent when I was 18 years old. Not something that I recommend to anyone. It's very difficult, right? But I I will say that she and I have a great relationship. At one point, she had moved out, she had gone to school. She contacted me and said, "Hey, mom, can I move back home?" And we cook together. We'll have conversations. Some of those are even difficult at times, right? But I have apologized for the things that I had allowed from her high conflict step parent to do, right? She suffered tremendous amount of abuse. I had allowed things to happen because I did not recognize them as not being normal at the time, right? And I apologized for that. I apologized for not showing up for her the way that I could have differently. And I didn't know any better. And she says, "I know, mom. I know." I'm tearing up here. And she says, I love you, mom, and it's okay. I understand, mom. So we work together through those wounds. And it's not easy work, but it's learning how to go back, and that our words, it's not just saying an apology. And all of my kids will probably regurgitate this to anyone that asks, but I tell them, when they say even they're sorry to me for doing something, an apology without changed behavior is just manipulation, right? So it's not just about the apology, but it's, what am I going to do to change the behavior so that it doesn't keep happening?
As I was listening to you talk, I couldn't help but see that, yes, it sounds like you have gone through a lot of challenges with all of this situation and being there for your children and navigating family dynamics. But I also see a level of growth and strength that you've developed through that. And I just want you to know that that has made you an incredible human being, not just for yourself and also for your children, but for others to also learn from. And so just know that you, although you may have gone through, I'm getting emotional here, but although you may have gone through a lot and navigated a lot, even from an early stage in life, that has helped you become a version of yourself that is an absolute blessing, not only to yourself but to others. And I think that is beautiful.
Thank you so much. You're going to make me cry. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
Of course. I want to share a story here. We have stepmoms and stepdads, sometimes even stepchildren, send us messages and tell us their story or their challenges that they're facing. And I want to share one specific story with you here because I think that this is not just in your wheelhouse, but I think that a lot of people are going through this. So I'll read the story and we can just dive into it.
Please.
Okay. Hi, Lena. I need help and I don't know where else to turn because every attorney I've spoken to has either told me there's nothing I can do or quoted a retainer I can't afford. I've been married to my husband for 2 years and he has a 7-year-old daughter from his previous relationship. We have her every week. We have her every weekend per the custody agreement, or we're supposed to. In the last 4 months, her mom has denied visitation 6 times. The excuses change every time. It's either the little girl is sick, or there's a birthday party, or she forgot to tell us about a school thing. Once, she simply didn't bring her or didn't respond to a single message the entire weekend. My husband has documented some of it. We have screenshots of texts and a few notes here and there, but it's scattered and it's not organized. When he brought it up informally to his attorney, he was told that a few missed weekends won't move a judge. So he let it go, but it keeps happening. This is what scares me. I've started noticing things when we do have her. She's 7, and she told me last month that mommy said daddy is trying to take her away, and that's why she can't always come to our house. And I see a 7-year-old carrying that on her face when she arrives. And she's relieved to be here with us, but she looks guilty about it. So I've started tracking everything now because my husband shuts down when it comes to dealing with his ex. I have a notes app full of dates, times, and what was said. I have screenshots organized in a folder on my phone, but I don't know if what I have is enough. I don't know what format it needs to be in. And I don't know how to turn what I'm holding into something that actually matters in a courtroom. And to be honest, I'm terrified that if we go back to court, they'll look at me, the step parent, and use my involvement as a reason to dismiss everything. Like I'm documenting, like my documenting makes me look vindictive instead of protective. What do I do?
Mm,
That's a lot.
it is a lot. And, this is something that protective parents come to me with all the time. I've helped many protective moms and dads over the years. And the first thing is not about the amount of visits that have been necessarily withheld. For this listener, I would really focus on the amount of time that this has been going on. How long has this been occurring? How long is this behavior with the withholding the child during the parent's parenting time? Has it been 6 months, right? Let's say, for example, for our conversation purposes, it's been 6 months, right? We're going to look at that and say in the 6 months' time, dad should have had however many weekends, 30 total, maybe, right? And of those 30 weekends that he was supposed to have visitation, he's only actually completed 10 of those visits. Because of the 20 other visits, mom has withheld the child with a plethora of multiple different excuses, right? I would then encourage the step parent and the parent to look at their custody order. Is there anything in that custody order that says the child can be withheld because they're sick? I'm betting that it doesn't say that. Is there anything in there that says that the child has to be withheld if there's a school activity? Likely not, right? It's allowing the other parent the opportunity to parent and to take them to the activity, which the high conflict mom in this scenario hasn't been doing. And so, even though attorneys can charge an extreme amount of money, this is a classic case of what I would say I would encourage one to look in filing for contempt as well as for a modification, right? Now, to get a modification of custody, the statutes in just about every state, and again, this is pretty easy to look up. It talks about a substantial change in circumstance. And if there's a substantial change in circumstance in this scenario, it is the child has been withheld for an extreme amount of time, right? And there's no really main indication. Neither has mom offered any makeup time, right? So that for me would be grounds to look at filing for modification as well as contempt. Now, in my own case, I filed for contempt and modification simultaneously. And I think that's what really helped me in the long run. Do I encourage everyone to do that? Do your research, right? I think that it's a really good strategic move, but I'm not an attorney, right? So I'm not giving you legal advice as to what to do or not. But I would say that sending also a message to the high conflict parent. And when they're saying, she's not going to come this weekend or she's sick, oh, wow. Hi. Thank you for sharing. I'm so sorry that she's not feeling well. Please tell her that I hope she feels better soon. And then I said, hello. Can we discuss some makeup parenting time? Right? Now, what are we doing with that message? We're not saying that mom is going to give in and she's going to say yes. No, that's not going to happen. But we are creating a documented pattern of behavior where we're saying, okay, mom is saying no, the child can't come or is unable to come. I have requested over 20 times the ability to have makeup time. I have recognized that the child is sick and I've asked, or I've even said, oh, I'm sorry she's not feeling well. I am happy and able to care for her during my parenting time, right? So you have two different options there. It's learning how to give the other parent rope. We know that they're not going to agree. That's not the point. That's not the point of us sending the message. It is to have something on the record that shows our efforts to co parent, right? Now, with the screenshots and all of that, I wouldn't as much focus on the child, but rather the things that the child is saying. I would write it down verbatim in the child's own words. Okay. And what did you do? Right. It's not about just telling on the other parent of what they're doing bad, but family court wants to see if we're solution oriented. How have we tried to solve the problem? What was your approach when the child said this to you? Reassured her that that's not the case with dad. And we're so glad when she comes to see us. Right. Now, as a step parent that's being involved and is helping your partner who's freezing, I would give the advice of continue to help your partner who is freezing. And your efforts and documentation can be theirs, right? You're going to hand it over to them and you're going to pull yourself out of it. Your job is to be the techie behind the scenes, right? You're pulling the curtains, you're helping them so that they can get through this because for them, it's re-triggering, right? It's re-traumatizing. They just want it to be done. And so they're freezing, right? It's a traumatic response, but you are not as emotionally within the situation. So you're trying as best as you can to support your partner so that they're not freezing. That's what I would start with. But I think that this case probably has enough information to go forward and looking at contempt and modification so that dad could potentially get more parenting time because he sounds like he's really involved.
Yeah. And to the stepmom who is documenting everything. I mean, that is a really good support system
It
to
is.
have because when the dad is freezing and there is a telltale sign that oftentimes biological and healthy parents go through because they're just so done with the situation and have perhaps been with this person for years and years of this thing being done to them. And so they're at the point where they just can't do anything anymore. And perhaps they've been freezing in the marriage whenever conflicts are being targeted at them. And so old patterns turn to just come in where they don't want to or they can't even do anything about it. So having that step parent document, I think it's beautiful to see such support. But I can tell it's not easy for the stepmom as well to see everything
No, it's not.
happening.
And she's a superhero, right? She's a superhero stepmom and she is this healthy protective parent has built-in support that so many single parents that don't have a partner crave and wish that
Mhm.
they had. So I commend the stepmom and the step parent for, the actions and the steps that she's taking to be supportive for her partner and also help a little girl, this child who is innocent, to navigate a really complex situation.
Yeah. So, for the parent or step parent listening or watching us right now who feels like the court system is designed to protect the wrong person, what do you want them to know?
I don't say this to discourage anyone, but there is no justice truly in the justice system. It is learning how to be strategic, unemotional, and presenting their case in a way that would make sense to legal professionals. And to not give up, right? Like they might have felt defeated and, the judge thought I was crazy and I had so much. Keep going. Don't quit. You can still reinvent things. You can still build yourself back up. Continue to show up for yourself and for your children in ways that you never thought you'd be able to. You are braver than all of your fears combined, and you can do amazing things. And you will. You just have to keep believing in yourself.
Thank you so much, Bridget.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for having me on here and asking all these
Absolutely.
questions. It's making me emotional.
It's been a beautiful conversation. I could talk on and on and on and on. Um, it's been wonderful
It
having you.
has. I agree. I've loved chatting with you today.
Thank you.